Right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on test automation in telecoms with Accolite Digital and Leapwork. My name is Dasha Naumkina, and I will be a moderator for today's session. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a follow-up email after the session with the link to the recording, so you can watch it again later or share it with others on your team. Now, let's meet today's speakers. We have with us today Sanjeev Kumar, General Manager, Media and Telecoms in Accolite Digital, Sucharita, Technical Director, Media and Telecom in Accolite Digital, and Suna Ansi, Chief Evangelist at Leapwork. Hi, Sanjeev. Hi, Sucharita. Hi, Suna. All right. Just before I hand you over to microphone to main speakers, let us look at the agenda for today. So Sanjeev going to start with a short introduction of Accolite Digital, Telecom, and Media Practice Overview, followed by themes driving the telecom industry in 2021 and beyond. Sucharita then will dive into challenges in enabling automation in telco system and how to meet them. Then Suna will talk about Leapwork and its key capabilities, followed by a live demo. At the end, we will hold Q&A sessions. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to drop them in the questions tab or in the chat that you can see on the right side of your webinar interface. All right, without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Sanjeev. Sanjeev, stage is yours.
Thank you, Dasha. Quite excited to be part of this webinar along with Leapwork team on the role of QA and test automation in the digital transformation in the telecom industry. So my name is Sanjeev. I lead the telecom and media practice at Accolite Digital. 2.5 decades now in the telecom industry, working across a number of SI partners as well as working for service providers like Vodafone. I'm going to start with a brief introduction of Accolite Digital, and then we'll move on to what test automation means in the digital transformation world. So Accolite Digital, we are a global firm specializing in digital product engineering, headquartered in the US. This is 14th year of our operations. We've got a team of around 2,500 people worldwide. A major portion of that is based out of India across 5 delivery centers we have. And the core focus, as I said, is we specialize in digital transformation across digital product engineering, cloud, CX and design, which is all the customer front-ending apps, whether it's mobile apps or the omni-channel experience for consumers, cybersecurity, and data analytics. So those are the 5 core areas where we specialize and focus on. Within the media and telecom practice, our focus is around, I would say, 4 core areas. So BSS and OSS modernization. You can see on the top right corner area, that's are the telecom and media focus areas. And you can, as probably some of you know, there's huge focus on moving the legacy telecom landscape towards cloud native products. Then we're also looking at how does the telecom market is moving towards 5G and IoT platforms to make or to take advantage of the new revenue streams. And we're looking at how we can help our clients build those platforms which will enable new revenue streams. And omni-channel transformation, which has been a focus area for quite a few years, significantly improving the end customer experience. For a number of our clients worldwide, we've made significant business impact. So what we pride ourselves is on the speed and quality of execution in the digital transformation world and the business outcomes we deliver for our clients. So for example, for a leading telecom company in the US, we've reduced their cost of operations in the omni-channel world by more than 35%, where we've taken the whole e-commerce journey to the cloud in less than 7 months. Similarly, we've, for another client, improved the test automation or the whole platform engineering processes by 85% and so on. So I think that's the theme you will see with Accolite Digital coming and again as we talk through. We always look at what is the business outcome we deliver through digital transformation. If we move on to the next slide, please, Tasha. Great, thank you. So the four core themes uh, as far as telecom industry is concerned is customer experience. So I already touched on a few of these elements. I think customer experience has been a theme for quite a few years. I think still a lot of work needs to be done in terms of improving net promoter scores or the equivalent across telecom landscape. The bulk of BSS, OSS cloud modernization is towards the cloud native products, either to have standard cloud native products or actually build capabilities on the cloud, which are more homegrown. Data analytics. So telecom companies tend to have tons and tons of data, probably too much data, but I think probably not enough information which can be synthesized and make sense of. So you can predict events, so you can predict the consumer behavior, or you can predict what product the consumers are likely to uh, pick up rather than always do post facto analysis. And 5G IoT, I think, as we all know, is a new revenue stream which most of the telcos are vying for, which will enable them to do a lot more enterprise services. And in many ways, this will make telecoms connect the whole world in a much more seamless way, allowing them to monetize those services across the enterprise segment. So just before we move on, so what does it mean? So you can see there's a huge kind of churn in the industry, both from a consumer simplification of the operations as well as new revenue lines perspective. This means everyone is going for digital transformation, keeping digital first in the focus. And as you go through that digital transformation, one of the key element of the success is around how do you simplify or how do you automate the testing processes, because the more you change, the more you test. That's the kind of the nature of the game. So we see the quality assurance or the test automation both from an end-to-end testing as well as from a business user testing perspective, a key element of how telcos can be successful in the digital world. So I think with those thoughts, I will probably let Sucharita take over from here and talk in specific on the test automation and what are thoughts there. Thank you.
Sanjeev? Yes, thanks for the brief background on what we are doing with respect to telcos and how the telecom industry is shaping up. Yeah, with the advent of 5G, I mean, it became obvious that the systems have to be moved or upgraded themselves into more digital space, be it cloud transformation or be it modernization of the tech stacks. So, what we have observed, uh, particularly me being involved with telcos for more than a decade now, there were a lot of issues around how do we test these, and there are different phases of testing that come across, right? And the challenges particularly with telcos are the systems are very heterogeneous. When I say heterogeneous, each stack is different. If there are 10 teams working on 10 systems, be it order capturing or be it order orchestration and fulfillment, all these systems are built on different technical stacks. And integrating them is the best part of it. Testing them is another best part of it. So, most of the telcos that we work on have this challenge of how do we automate the entire testing end to end, right? And it's not an easy thing being given the nature of the systems over a time they're built. Now with the cloud transformation, yes, we can think, okay, everything is on cloud and the testing will be easy, but there are challenges there as well, right? The other thing with telcos is again, as part of the digital transformation, we are slowly moving into multi-channel systems, omni-channel. So we will be able to give a seamless experience to the users, be they come to the web portal or do they shop in a shop of the telco, or do they do a self-serve portal, anything. It could be any channel. We want to give them a seamless experience. But at the same time, we also want to provide them particular gains. For example, if a customer is visiting a shop, so we just want to give them a particular product when they come and visit the shop, or some kind of you can say offers, yeah. And during Christmas, we want to give them different offers. So there is a uniformity and there is also a diversity. So that's the key challenge in the telcos, I would say. And how do we test these multi-channel systems? Do we write the code once and we want that code to run for every channel, or we want to keep it diversified? Then what will happen to the testing efforts? Do we need to redo all the testing for each of the channel, right? And that's where the automation plays a very key role. As long as, for example, you have a mobile app as well as a web application which is serving the same customer, and you write the code once, predominantly the backend part of it and also the front end part of it, using common technologies, then you can use the automation also, leverage whatever you have used in web or mobile app and vice versa, right? And when we come to the backend systems, so integration testing plays a key role. The systems are diversified. We have EBXMLs to Mule, middleware. Middleware again is diversified. It could be vast technologies starting from your BPMs and how varied the databases are, right? With those complexities, how much can we automate the testing of these APIs? So, and from the front end, let's say I'm placing an order, the customer is placing an order, buying a phone or buying a phone plan or a broadband plan. Then once the order is placed, it goes through all these backend systems with a single API, whichever is the first connecting point. How can I test the entire flow? That has been a key challenge and a key ask from most of the telcos to us. And we believe, I mean, when we started working with Leapwork and see how the tool is working, it's pretty simple. All you need is the API endpoint, and that API could be connecting to multiple endpoints down the line. It really doesn't matter. You'll be able to test that integration part. And the next challenge is about the billing systems. Billing systems, again, are very varied. Most of the telcos use COTS products out of the shelf, and there are telcos who are also using in-house products. So be it COTS or in-house, how do we automate the entire billing system? And the challenge there is, again, whether we have converged accounts, I mean, system catering to both mobile as well as fixed line, or do we have systems which are serving both of them differently? If so, how do we test both of them? How do we integrate both the features? And is it like a combined bill that is going to the user, or is it different bills? And how do I test each part of the bill? How do I ensure that customer understands each part of the bill? So there are challenges, again, in the billing system test automation. The next one is about analytics and reporting. This is another key ask from most of the telcos, because let's say today I'm placing an order. The data in most of the places when it goes for analytics and reporting is aged, meaning I'll be working on the data at least 2 days from now because of all the middleware and the fulfillment systems that are in place. And by the time the data comes to me and I run the analytics on top of it, am I really making use of the latest trends of the users? May or may not be, right? So how do we capture the real-time analytics, and how do we ensure that the business is aligned to it? So the recent digitization has caused more of these questions coming in, and what business is also expecting is, how do I leverage the digitization and reduce the time to market? So when I want to reduce the time to market, I should have a quality product as well, right? So we started analyzing, and the telcos who have come to us have a lot of these questions, which we try to answer. And now I'll hand over to Suni to take over and give us deep insights into what Leapwork does for us.
And thank you for that, Tricia. And before, if you could just jump back on notch again, Dasha, just one slide back. Before we do that, because obviously you've given us a very good and thorough explanation of the complexity of as a modern telco, right? These are the challenges, these are the pains of my system ecosystem. And then if you look at the right side of this slide, obviously some of the you could say, commercial or business-driven impact coming out of this complexity. Now, in your experience, what would you say as a telco? What's the, looking into all these different systems, looking into to that huge driver, which is the cost of doing both building complex software, but certainly also verifying and doing QA on it. In your experience, how are the organizations enabling this? Because the time pressure, the pressure from the market, both real pressure, and also the companies are very good at perceiving this pressure themselves. Creating that urgency. At least that was what it was like when I was in telco. How do you see them prioritizing this? If you have user experience on one side and you have all of these system complexities and verification on that level, how do you see prioritization going on right now? Are they managing to test all of it, or are they driving a sharp knife through it?
Okay, it's actually two ways. One is what we call as a feature-based testing. So when we are introducing new features, right, a new plan being introduced. So mostly we are doing a feature-based testing. So we test that part of it and the impacted areas around it so that we take them to market pretty quickly. And second thing is reliability on the whole regression test pack. So that's where I think telcos are spending a lot of time, so that will enable them, once you have the entire regression pack in place, right? It is easy for any of the new features that are coming in to be tested and ensure that they're not breaking whatever is already existing. So a lot of emphasis is being given on the test automation, particularly for the full regression.
And is it your experience that they're actually managing to do this every time around, or is it a constant, you could say, risk assessment prioritization game when they do this?
I would say yes, there is a risk, because most of the times what we rely upon, I mean, at least from our side, we try to put in silos, as I said, like each system being tested in silos. Yeah, we have tests that run through your entire life cycle of the product. However, they are tested in silos. So the end-to-end testing is what we are after.
Yeah.
If I can add just maybe 20 seconds here, Sunay.
Please do.
I think you always carry that risk, right? So as we say, like, in God we trust, everything else we test. So the idea is to make sure you do enough testing, because it's never, you're not going to test everything, right? So key thing is to be able to prioritize and let the users prioritize, because I think the shift, and this is where I think Accolite Digital and Leapwork thinking is similar, right? The shift is that users prioritize, not anybody else. And the trick is to do it fast enough so that you are not building testing systems to test, right? So through the core system. So you use low code platforms and more digital players like us. So you're doing it quicker. So I think that is how I will put it.
It's a good point. And obviously it's also, and a third thing which we haven't touched in on explicitly now, but obviously this ever-changing nature of the market space that they're in, again, talking into that urgency, of course, means that this is not something that they do once or twice a year, but repeatedly and extremely frequently. We've sort of passed the let's do a Christmas campaign thing and then take the rest of the year off, right? It's changed a bit since then. Okay, cool.
There, Sune, it's more like, okay, let's say if I'm doing a transformation, let's say we are doing, right? So the way we put it is, we build the microservices, we test them end to end, we ensure that as per spec, everything is fine, right? And then the integration test part of it, all that is done. But there is a manual effort there as well, though we are automating most of it. And how do we leverage any low code platform to come in and then speed up this process, right?
Exactly. And obviously that's the nature of the partnership that we have, you guys bringing in all the knowledge and insights, and we on our side trying to facilitate the acceleration bit, especially when it comes to the functional QA and verification end to end. So on that note, Dasha, please take us onwards and talk a little bit about then introducing Leapwork into the mix, so to speak. So we've been talking about, through Sucharita's intro, we've been talking about the complexity of systems and the complexity of telco, and then of course entering a Leapwork into that specific context, which then has to do both in a telco transformation context, but indeed throughout implementing and deploying new software. How can you then utilize Leapwork as an asset through supporting your endeavor in building new software functionality? So briefly introducing Leapwork, we are a full stack automation capability. What that means is that we will allow you to do automation across a wide range of technologies and ecosystems and platforms and what have you, all focused and centered around the end user experience. So ultimately, functional testing using the GUI of the different applications. And what we're trying to signify there on the left is obviously, as I'm sure you're all aware, the wide range of changes and appearances of these infrastructures going from the IBM mainframe and yesterday towards the latest and greatest into tomorrow's technologies coming from the likes of Salesforce and SAP. Next, please. And the way that we accommodate that, the way that we facilitate that automation endeavor, because obviously at the end of the day, irrespectively of which system that you're operating in, irrespectively of which context it is that we need to do quality assurance on, and irrespectively of where we are in a given cycle or in a given stage of a business process, at the end of the day, you will have a business user sitting there with the insight, the knowledge, the competencies in terms of operating and running the business process. Now, one of the challenges of working with automation so far has been that really that insight, that skill has been sort of second level or second grade, if you will. The most important thing to be capable of was the ability to do coding. Now, as certainly the partnership that we have here together with Accolite sort of proves, there's nothing wrong with coding. There's huge amounts of highly specialized and targeted testing and QA efforts, which basically doesn't make any sense to do outside the realm of coding. And then you have types of testing and activities associated with especially the user experience, especially when we're talking in the telco transformation agenda. We're talking about the omni-channel experience, all of those things that we want to bring together in a seamless user experience. And that's really not a conversation about APIs, unit tests, interfaces, and what have you. It is a context which talks into the user experience, the user's ability to act and to do those order to purchase, to do those requests to solutions that will allow them to facilitate, whatever they need in their job and in their ability as their proportion of being, part of that life cycle working with the telco. So what we have done is created a visual language, which is the one that you see here depicted on the screen, which we will come back to during the demo, which ultimately enables the business user to express the things that they need by sort of taking us through the steps required in the business process, well documented in the different ETOM models and what have you, and then convert those steps into efficient automation, irrespectively if that runs in the latest and greatest web interface, or as I mentioned previously, some of those dodgy Java-based applications dating back from potentially even the 90s. And that, of course, is the reality of BSS stacks in telcos across the world. It's not just and not only the latest and greatest or the oldest, most legacy stuff that they could find. It's things intermixing into each other and working in a combined context. Right, next please. So the key capabilities of supporting that process. So we talked about the visual language, but what it is also then about, and that's really what comes in from the left, this visual no-code approach for the business user. Now, the one story is, of course, building the automation, but certainly also and very, very importantly, in that fast-paced acceleration context that we also talked about, both within transformation, but certainly also in running everyday business, managing things at speed. Well, in order to keep your automation running, keep your automation relevant, you need to be able to maintain it. You need to be able to ensure that it's constantly updated, that it's constantly running and providing your QA teams with real and valid information. And so obviously troubleshooting and reporting becomes a crucial part of the overall case for building automation. If you can build automation fairly quickly, but maintaining it is bordering impossible, well, obviously what that ends up with is that you'll have automation either not running or running, and even worse, than yielding incorrect results. So making sure that those things meet all within the context of the business user is one of the key capabilities of Leapwork, which, and then again, we're talking into the, you could say, the deployment-based activities, ensuring that it fits into your delivery pipeline, ensuring that it works well with the modern and the up-to-date ways of delivering and facilitating software. So DevOps, CI/CD, fitting seamlessly into those existing pipelines, of course, so that existing investments made on those ALM parts of your infrastructure is, of course, secured. And finally, and I think importantly, that ability to work seamlessly across technologies to secure the user experience across complex end-to-end transactions, starting again in the Java billing system from the noughts or the 90s, and coming up into the latest and greatest iPad-based omni-channel user experience out there in the retail outlet. Making those ends meet from a user and from an end user's perspective, ensuring that those capabilities are in place is, of course, crucially important, that you can do those in a true end-to-end kind of way. Right, next one, please. So to conclude on that, having the ability to traverse all of these different technologies, these different applications and frameworks is one of our key propositions, combining that with the ability of the business users to express the business process, whether it begins in one end or the other and terminates in one end or the other. It is and remains a story about those business activities and steps that you need to do as an operator of a BSS in a transformation context, and obviously your automation tool needs to be able to cater for those aspects, irrespectively of which technology is in play. Right. Okay, so what is then the outcome of introducing this combined approach of accelerated and digitized QA in a transformation context? Well, first and foremost, for those of all of you potentially in the midst of one or more transformation activities, one of the things that remains one of the key drivers behind it is, of course, to ensure that you have a faster time to market, the ability to respond to digital clients, their constantly and fluctuating demands, the seamlessly endless appearance of new exciting digital services that you want to deliver OTT to your clients, being able to respond to that, being able to incorporate that into your offering, being able to navigate that as seamlessly and as naturally as those price plans, which is your core business. You know, making those ends meet up at the end of the day, when all of these things needs to be added into the mix behind countless APIs to find their way into their customer subscription, you know, in the fastest possible way, of course, remains one of the key drivers. And then from an application integration context, what you then need, of course, also to be able to cater for through automated QA, needless to say, reducing the cost of errors, reducing the errors to begin with, because obviously that's a key enabler behind the accelerated time to market, but also certainly as you automate your QA and you maintain you obtain coverage throughout of that, then you will be able to catch some of these issues before they find their way into the costly contexts of running in production, which I'm sure you'll all agree, cleaning up after bugs in production can be ever as costly, or even more so, than identifying them and fixing them in time. Telco being a highly regulated and observed domain, I think most operators feel the heat of the authorities making sure that they're playing nice and tidy. So having compliance check and control, making sure that across that complexity of systems that you can actually make sure that things are running as they should, but also that your QA effort will support that activity, making sure that you have that in control also during that part of the process, of course, is hugely important. And then there's a topic which we haven't really touched that much in upon, which is a very natural consequence of all of making this part of automation across an ever-growing scope more accessible for more types of business profiles and competencies. Of course, I'm talking into the fact that by sharing the load, if you will, of creating automation, that also means that you can reduce some of the costs associated with some of those highly specialized resources, which comes in scarce supply usually. So it's not just a matter of cost, but really also a matter of ensuring that you have the capacity and bandwidth that you need to drive your effort onwards. And as always, financial return, making sure, not just from a transformation activity perspective, but certainly also overall and day-to-day implementation and maintenance of your software. You need to look into the efficiency gains that you can obtain by providing full automation. And of course, as I'm sure Sucharita will agree, we're not just talking automation of functional GUI testing. We're talking about the full stack automation and covering those wide range of different types of verifications and test activities that you need to do across your BSS stack. And if you're interested in learning a bit more about that, I strongly urge you to have a look at our white paper, which we have published together, which will take you through some of those stories in a bit more detail. Right, enough talking for me, or at least reading from slides. Let's move into the glorious land of demoing and show you some use cases of, well, then how can automation then actually look in such a context? And for that, I need to see if I can work my way into sharing a screen. So bear with me for just a second. So I will share a screen and see what happens.
Yeah, are you
It's always
up, Sunil? So one question which I actually touched upon earlier, like when it is an omni-channel experience. So let's say I have a web application as well as a mobile app application for the same features. So how does Leapwork work? Do I need to rewrite all the tests, or is it like write once, run on any channel?
So this visual language that Leapwork brings to the table to make automation more accessible for more people within the operational and deployment team, obviously is fairly unique in the way that it addresses automation. So the short answer to your question, unfortunately, existing automation, while obviously making sure that you have an idea of the scope that you need to work with, is not something that you can immediately deploy or export, if you will, into an automation context, at least within Leapwork. But as I hope that I'll be able to demonstrate during the demo, short as it is the speed with which you can build these automation flows more than compensates for that initial investment that you need to do in bringing automation into play. And of course, Leapwork will gladly run side by side with any existing automation efforts that you have in place.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Okie doke. Let's see if sharing screen is something that Livestorm will be playing along with. Dasha, do you need to stop sharing, you think? Dasha says no. That's interesting. Can I use that for anything? So I'm sharing with vigor, but I don't know if it's coming up. Can you confirm that?
It is
so you
coming
can
up.
see Leapwork.
Thank
Thank you, crowd, for making me a happy man. I was struggling a little bit there with the screen over here to my right showing a very static image. But anyway, now that you can see Leapwork Studio, everything is good and we can continue from here. So I'm just going to do, of course, for the being mindful of time here, I'm just going to be fairly quick about it and show you some very simple use cases, which will give you an impression of how things work. And I also want to make sure that I can touch in on, some of the aspects associated with the points that I was making, specifically when it comes to maintaining and making sure that your automation keeps running. So I have some very simple use cases based on a prototype system, which Accolite has been kind enough to provide us with, which looks pretty much like any order interface on an omnichannel / web-based presence that you will find out there in the world. And I think I just have it available here. So as you can see here, it's a fairly standardized checkout flow here. And what I'm going to be doing for you is doing some very slight modifications, which, very simple but representative use cases. So working a little bit with some default area codes down here, and also doing some example of, how even though that you do functional testing when working with the payment here, that you can work with some activities which will give you satisfaction in terms of understanding whether or not that your APIs are being addressed in the required manner. So without further ado, let's carry on and get started with that. So introducing Leapwork very briefly, again, being mindful of time. Of course, there's a standard Leapwork webinar you can find if you want to go to the full story. So also in respectful of making sure that we can have some Q&A afterwards, I'm just going to be pretty quick about it. So we're going to be focusing our time on this part of the Leapwork application. We call this the canvas, which is basically where you design and draw your automation effort. That visual language that you saw in the PowerPoint previously, that's the one that we're going to bring to life here. And it begins with, obviously, from a starting position. So you can see that signified clearly here with the start building block. Now, the first thing that I need to get going, and here I'm cheating a little bit because I prepared that in advance due to the URL. I'm sure you'll bear with me. This is not something that you learn by heart. But here's a building block that wants to launch a browser and navigate to a given site. So without further ado, let's create that context, which will allow us to do automation within that. So I'm just going to hit the run button here to make sure that Leapwork fires up the Chrome browser in this instance and navigates to the required web page. And obviously all in due time, and always painfully slow when you're doing live demos, especially with Livestorm on top, but bear with me. So now loading up that page that I just briefly showed you previously, coming to live on the screen near you in just a second. Here we go. So loaded completely into Leapwork, we can see that the page is ready for us to work on with. Now, what I need to do first, I want to do that area code check. So it begins with me clicking on the Checkout Now button. So I'm going to return to Leapwork here and just show you briefly how would you do that from a user's perspective. Well, the browser is up and running, so I'm going to launch the recorder and proceed to build the flow as I would operate the application as a business user. Now, in order to do that, you can see that Leapwork has gone into capture mode since recording is on. You can tell that by the widget that you have running down here in your left-hand corner, shows you the recording is active. And while recording is active, capture mode is always on and inspecting application components in real time. So you can always see specifically what it is that you're potentially working with. Now I need to click on the Checkout Now button. So I'll do that to do a capture. Leapwork will do a calculation of that context and create a locator strategy for you, everything running behind the scenes. So what you need to focus on is the action that you want to do. So I want to click on this element. It's a left click. So I'll do that. And then wait for the application to respond and obviously logically then bring me to the next step of what I want to work with. Now I'm going to scroll down a little bit into the application here to work with that area code challenge that I presented for myself too. So that requires me to go here to the edit section to operate that. So again, capturing it. Leapwork again asks me in a couple of seconds, right? That's a click. It tries to nominate different actions. Let's just focus on the ones that make sense for now, which is the click action, which will allow me to go into the edit mode. Now, what I can do here very shortly, I can say that I want to use the same area code for all lines that I'm, assigning to this particular customer. So I'm just going to click on this one to activate that selection. So click Web Element. Again, it's a left click, which brings up the ability for me to then type in the area code that I then want to work with. And so I'm going to click on that field to type that value into it. And then I can, for instance, say, right, I want to go for the area code 212 and punch that in, which then immediately brings a reflection down here that this is then the preferred area code that you want to work with. Now, validation-wise, the use case here, of course, is to ensure that this actually triggers as expected. So I'm going to ask Leapwork to fetch that number out of it so that we can work for a compliance check on that one. So that's a get web number action that I want to do on that, and hit apply, and then I'm actually done. So I've completed the run, so I'll return to the interface, and then Leapwork will have created that visual flow that I demonstrated for you previously, now here on the canvas, taking you through the steps of navigating as a user through this particular activity, which was of course was to update the area code. Now let's just try and run this flow, and here's fingers crossed in the live demo that it actually behaves. So at any given time, of course, you can do a preview. So basically just restarting the flow. So now it's going to run from scratch and navigate its way through the steps that I just recorded on the screen. So relaunching the Chrome browser, which will be in any second. Here we go. And we already saw that it could be a bit slow loading the page. So we'll just give it that couple of seconds. And I'm being mindful of time here, so I think this will be the only demoing that we will do. So just to give an impression of what it does, what I want to show you with this run is obviously the ability to then understand the results or the quality of the given execution. So now we're watching Leapwork actually doing the things, so getting into that section of signing the numbers and checking the preferred area code, setting it in, and it doesn't actually have to need to have the stuff on screen while it's working on it. So it's currently getting the number and resulting that into the log. What I want to show you with this is the result of a run in Leapwork, because now I want you to imagine that you don't just have this one individual flow. You have potentially hundreds of flows running, validating the overall totality of your one-screen context. So you have, either triggered automatically through your CI/CD pipeline or running in a scheduled fashion. You have these aspects and insights coming in, and you need to navigate those. As the tester, you need to understand, out of potentially hundreds of run, those failing, what actually happened? Where did they fail? Why did they fail? Was it a result of, it could be a wrong area code, or it could be the application actually changed, or it could be a bug. Those insights requires different actions, and those are crucial. Getting those decisions made in the right way as fast as you can is obviously a key enabler to the overall ability of accelerating the business of doing successful QA. So what Leapwork gives you to support that process, what you have here on the left, full video recording of the entire run. If I scroll this horizontal bar, you can see it basically just takes me through the full run of launching the application and navigating through the steps of performing them. Now notice, as I scrub in the video, how this log on the right is interactively following along. So what you have side by side is what the automated application is doing, as well as the automating application. And then finally, what you have here up on the top, the flow itself that we just built. Now notice the building blocks here having green highlights around them. That means that they performed successfully. They were able to do their thing. We're currently right here. This orange highlight matches exactly where we are. Let's say if I go to the type action where I'm typing in the area code, that takes us to the part in the video where we're actively punching in the 212 area code, and you see that building block lighting up. So you always know exactly where and when you are during automation. And of course, these end-to-end flows can be quite long. So just understanding, in the event, again, that they're breaking, where did they break, is something that can take quite a while when navigating through logs, through scripts, and so forth and so forth, which is the typical way of doing it when working with script-based automation. But here you can see you have that insight sitting there side by side. Now let me just show you lastly, and I'm going to do this very quickly just to make sure that we have time for questions, because obviously this is nice, but just only working with 212, here's a hard-coded area code. So let's see if we can beef that up a little bit and make this flow run with any area code. And obviously then you can open up for iterations and looping as well. Now the way that you do that, it begins with adding some sort of data source into your flow, which will feed any parameterizations that you do. So Leapwork will work with any existing ODBC database that you have. It will work with any existing API endpoint that you have available, so that you can attach those and drive data to and from those endpoints. Now for this demonstration though, I'm going to be using the tester's preferred weapon any day, which of course is the simple Excel sheet. So I'm just going to hook it up to an Excel sheet that I have prepared in advance here for this Accolite demo, which holds some simple data prerequisites for some of the flows that I was hoping to build, but obviously time went away. So I'm just going to do a selection here visually. So as a user, I can just do a selection here as I would in Excel and check this one here, which will basically configure the building block to work with the valid insights that I want to use, and then insert the data source into a meaningful spot in the flow, which could be, for instance, right here when I start the editing. So I'll put it in here, rewire those green connectors here to make sure that stuff is now actively being executed. The green wires tell you the order of execution. And then what we're working with today is, of course, the area code, which is coming over here. So what I want to do is I want to feed the field that types in the area code. So it's now being parameterized by the data source. And then what I can do is to say, to make sure that the validation will then pass any number that I get and check that it's actively and correctly updating, I can just add a compare functionality in here. So compare, and then take the number that you find when you actually fetch the number past updating. So take that number and use as value A, and then use value B, which is the one coming in from the data source, and compare those two. And if it's the match, then you pass the flow. So this was just to give you a very short, admittedly, and also drive-by kind of demo of how a simple use case could look like. But what I want to take with you here is how we operated that business interface as the business user would, and we navigated the parts of the application. We navigated the controls of the application as the user would. So I clicked on them, I typed stuff into them, and as you can see here with the language that we then have on the screen, the resulting output, that visual language, allows you as a user to work your way through and understand and read what automation is doing, but not just individually, but across the team, because this language is universal and will allow your team members to work side by side on and utilize each other's features and functionalities. So through that, also obtaining scale within automation. And now I've been talking too much, I know. So thanks for bearing with me so far. I'll stop sharing again after this short demo. And yeah, thanks. Any things for us, Dasha, that we need to work on with?
We just join the speak now again.
You are muted, I should probably say. Dasha is making her way back to the scene.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Lovely. Am I back? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yes. Now the time for the Q&A. We have 10 minutes left, and we do have a list of questions. And I guess I'll just start with one of those. So, how is the SOAP endpoint integration is done with Leapwork? So now, that's for you.
Sorry, I was trying to read the question as well. Could you please reiterate? Apologies.
How is the SOAP endpoint integration is done?
So I introduced verbally some of the abilities to integrate data sources into the flow. It's all based on building blocks, and the specific one here is called HTTP request. You just plug it in, punch in the URI for the resource that you want to utilize, and then it's good to go. I should probably and highlight, and I think this is something that Sucharita and I has been talking about quite a lot when we did the white paper. So the intricacies of and Sucharita, please chirp in anytime. There's an important difference on hogging up to an API endpoint and using it as part of automation and then validating it. And maybe Sucharita, you could just add some words. If you were to look at the scope of automation and to verification in this complex BSS stack, how much time is currently spent, on the, you could say, the headless unit kind of testing on endpoints versus the end-to-end approaches?
Okay, on the unit testing part of it, we have sort of pre-built modules which we can reuse of. We don't have any issue there. It's more about the end-to-end, the integration point of view. For example, in the application that we have seen, if there is a card validation to be done, and that card validation goes to a third-party system, so how is that API integration done? Right, and how does that flow go seamlessly? So currently, I think we are using Selenium. One question which I had there was, let's say telcos have already built a part of Selenium automation testing on the current stacks. Can they be reused in any way or plugged into this network
Well, you can certainly use your existing Selenium-based automation, and I think it's a very good question, Suchrit, because obviously many of these organizations come with some sort of legacy within automation, and as you say, especially looking at web-based front ends, there tends to be Selenium lying around, and to be clear, Leapwork is piggybacking on the Selenium framework when we automate stuff running in the browser. So it's not as if that we're a stranger to it. You can orchestrate Selenium-based triggers and activities from Leapwork. So as I mentioned previously, having Leapwork running side by side with your existing automation effort is perfectly feasible, and I think a good way to start when you try to navigate, this accelerated pace. So going back to scratch is typically not what your typical telco would prefer to do. So it's going to be a transition period because existing Selenium will not port itself into a Leapwork context. It's in our experience, at least, Selenium essentially is code, and it's built by individuals making their way of doing coding, which doesn't port itself very well into the standardized context, which is our visual language, unfortunately.
Yeah, that actually points me to another question. So there is a notion that all these low code platforms, whichever are being built, either it could be test automation or the code level low code platforms that are being built, uh, it's more for the citizen developers to come in. When I say citizen developers, it could be business people or people who do not have coding expertise. So, how much of that is possible with Leapwork?
Well, certainly we sort of fit into that context of enabling the citizen developers, and so taking those skilled business users and convert their insights and understanding into working automation. But I think so far so good, right? So making those people capable of creating code-like or application-like functionality without any specific requirements in terms of being able to do coding. But I think another very important point of the citizen developer definition is the fact that there are some frameworks, there are some sets of capabilities predefined and well known underneath that context of a citizen developer, which of course is a key enabler in IT embracing this domain, because they can see it as a way of accelerating the overall productivity without compromising too much on ways, having very different things coming into any kind of production context with little or limited control of what it is that they're actually doing. And of course, what I'm talking into here, when embraced by IT, we are talking governance. We are talking, a cross-functional, truly collaborative effort between technical and non-technical people at the end of the day to ensure that you have truly scalable and maintainable, in this case, automation, but it could be any other low-code or no-code application tool built in the right way. I hope it makes sense.
Yes, yes.
I'm just going to jump in here because we have a question from audience as well coming in. And the question from Aravind. So if is image comparison possible without external libraries? Also, will the tool work with mobile application automation in Android and iOS?
So short, yes and yes. Leapwork comes with full computer vision support, so it will basically just allow you to capture any segment on the screen and subject it to image recognition if that is the required approach. And this is typically something we see, especially in Citrix-heavy deployments where stuff is running in a virtual context. Working side by side with mobile application, and I don't want to hog the time from Accolite as well in this conversation. So just very briefly, we offer that support using our partnerships with both BrowserStack and Source Labs and utilizing their device cloud. Please follow up with us directly if you want further details and insights into that. We'd be happy to oblige.
Great, thank you so much, Suna. I guess time for one more question. If the website have CAPTCHA, how is it handled?
The evil CAPTCHA. So obviously CAPTCHA is as I'm sure you're all aware, this way of ensuring there's some kind of 2FA support, or at least validation of a given user not being a robot, which of course is exactly what Leapwork is. If at all you have the possibility and the option within within the QA context, so building the systems, maybe not subject the applications to the capture part there when you validate the functionality of the given applications. After all, the capture feature itself is not providing any business value to the proposition of the application. If that is not possible, then there are various ways of working with the capture interface, both attended and unattended, to make sure that that automation is also possible there. But it will add complexity, because obviously that's the whole purpose of the capture process. So it's worth considering not including that into your qualification scope. And then, of course, I'm being perfectly aware of some of these applications are maybe delivered from an external vendor, and then that could present another challenge. But something that we overcome together with the clients usually. Do you have any experiences, Sucharita, you want to share on this?
Yeah, so particularly around the security testing, whenever we do capture is one part of it, and OAuth. These are the two things which we constantly come across. So what we do with OAuth is again sort of have a mock OAuth token to be generated on the fly, so that I don't reuse the same token every time. I test a lot of variants of it. But capture has been, I mean, I would say not really we were able to do it. We are doing a part of testing on it, but not like a dynamical capture testing. Yeah.
So what's your experience of having conversations with clients of, basically not including it as part of the overall QA process? Any insights on that?
So it's more to do with the way the security part of it is. So as long as we ensure that, okay, the capture part of it is being tested in, even if it is a hard-coded one and it works fine, and the dynamic capture part of it, as more and more when there is an image capturing, and where we have, okay, make sure that confirm us that you're not a robo, where you have to click on few of the images. That's when there is a complexity. I think we are still figuring out how to do that.
Yeah.
And mostly what we do is sort of a the auth code embedded into the URL itself when it comes to auth, like the one that I gave you and which you launched, right? So
Yeah,
sort
and
of
passing a
has
token.
embedded session into it.
Yeah, passing the token and what have you.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I guess the time is up. We promised to let everyone go exactly on an hour. So I just would like to thank everyone for attending, and being a special shout out to our partners, Accolite Digital, for making it happen. Also, please stay tuned and check out our blogs and our downloadables, especially our white paper with Accolite Digital on the test automation telecoms. I guess thank you so much, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, Dasha.
Stay safe,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye bye.